Hello and welcome to the Neuron Regeneration Podcast. My name is Jarod Carter, and I'm the father of resilient 6-year-old twins, Adelaide and Gray, who both have a devastating neuromuscular condition called spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA for short, which primarily targets the lower motor neurons. The most aggressive form of SMA acts very fast, and so getting their diagnosis at 7 months old meant they had already sustained severe neuronal damage and loss. And though the SMA community has been incredibly fortunate to have breakthrough medications approved over the past decade, those drugs only slow or stop the progression of the disease at best. So my children, like hundreds of millions of people around the world with severe neurological conditions, are severely disabled and in desperate need of treatments that reverse neuronal damage and spark a healing and regenerative capability in a tissue type where it doesn't naturally occur. So upon recognizing the lack of approved treatments for full neural repair, after my children's SMA treatments had been initiated and we got home from my son's first really long hospital stay, I began to dig in and really research neuron regeneration. Now, luckily, I have a healthcare background and a doctorate in physical therapy, and that enabled me to understand most of what I was reading in the scientific journals. And as I researched, I was overjoyed to see how many brilliant minds were working on this problem now and have been for decades. But at the same time, I was also somewhat disheartened that with all that brilliance and all that work and the wonderful advances in knowledge and the breakthroughs that had occurred and a lot of exciting things kind of in the pipeline and developing, that we still don't have an FDA-approved treatment that fully reverses neuronal damage, across any central nervous system trauma or neurodegenerative disease. And with that being the case, as I researched, as I attended conferences and meetings, spoke with researchers, clinicians, biotech and pharma entrepreneurs, etc., I was always asking myself these questions. What can I do to try and accelerate the amazing work that's being done? What's not being done on a large scale that might get us better and faster results? Who can I bring together that might result in collaborations and a catalyst for ongoing or novel work? And in asking those questions, I noted a few things that really were a big part of me deciding to start neuronregeneration.com and the Neuron Regeneration Podcast and show. First, in 2023, when I set up the website, I was blown away that no one already owned the URL, neuronregeneration.com. I mean, I couldn't believe at that point it wasn't already snatched up. And that possibly it underscored a lack of focus on this issue outside of academia. Because neuralregeneration.org, which is, set up by scientists and people working predominantly on spinal cord injury, was established, and it has some great information. I strongly recommend you visit them, connect with them. They're wonderful people. Their primary focus, or activity, I should say, is a conference that they do every other year. I've been to one of them. It was fantastic. I also recommend it for anyone who's interested in this topic. But again, as you'll see, they're very spinal cord injury centric, which is great and very needed, of course. But I also feel like an organization focused on neural regeneration and healing across all contexts of neurotraumas and neurodegenerative diseases is needed. And that as I've been looking into this for a few years, it either didn't exist until now or it wasn't very easy to find and active. And along that same line of thought, I also don't see a great deal of cross-syndrome collaboration and discussions when it comes to the topic of neuron regeneration. I see most researchers focusing in a syndrome-specific manner, and for good reason. I mean, most neurodegenerative disease communities haven't been as fortunate as SMA. And most are still working on stopping the degeneration rather than reversing the nerve damage. I mean, you've got to put the fire out on the house before you can rebuild it, right? But as more disease-modifying therapies come out that do slow or stop the progression of various neurodegenerative diseases, those patients will still have a huge unmet need. And like my children, they will still need something to reverse the damage that's already been done. And though the pathophysiology of various neurological conditions can be vastly different, and therefore the stopping of their progression will also be vastly different, I personally believe that we will find there are common denominators for neuronal healing, things that can accelerate that healing or spark it to continue where it left off across all neuronal contexts. And look, please don't be offended if you are involved in cross-syndrome collaborations and discussions. I know it's occurring, and I thank you for it. And I'd really like to hear from you and learn what you're doing. So please do email me at info@neuronregeneration.com so we can talk about it. I'm just making the point that compared to the percentage of researchers and drug developers focused solely on a single syndrome or a small set of syndromes, those focused on neuron regeneration and healing as a whole is quite small. And I believe that if we're going to find solutions and approaches that work in any context, it's going to come from a meeting of the minds across all those contexts, all those neurodegenerative syndromes and traumas. So my hope is that neuronregeneration.com and this show spurs more of that to happen. It not only connects researchers and compels their collaborative ideas, but also brings funding of preclinical and translational work to those researchers and drug developers. In 2024, the World Health Organization announced that as of 2021, neurological conditions are now the leading cause of ill health and disability worldwide. They affect over 1 in 3 people, equating to over 3 billion people living with a neurological condition. I mean, think about that quote, the leading cause of ill health and disability worldwide. I mean, from a healthcare perspective, this is one of the world's biggest problems. So if we can find those common denominators to neuron healing and regeneration, we could benefit billions of people. I'm not a scientist, but I have a healthcare background and a history of entrepreneurial problem solving and an unending passion to help my children lead physically independent lives, and an incredible desire that in creating this neuron regeneration community, that we will play a large role in accelerating breakthroughs that will benefit an enormous amount of people. And I'm officially inviting you to join me in the neuron regeneration community on this journey. Improving one of the world's largest healthcare problems is going to take a lot of people with a wide variety of skill sets and backgrounds, not just in research or biotech and pharma, but patients, caregivers, clinicians, donors, fundraising experts, investors, legal experts, you name it. If this mission resonates with you and you'd like to get involved and help us push forward and accelerate breakthroughs in neuron regeneration as quickly as possible, please email us at info@neuronregeneration.com. And now a bit about what to expect specifically from this show. Most, if not all, episodes will be produced both as an audio podcast on all the different podcasting platforms, as well as a video show on YouTube. Starting out, episodes will be one of 3 things. Interviews of researchers and others working to solve this problem. We'll be talking to experts amongst all the different neurodegenerative diseases and neurotraumas focused on neuron regeneration. Second, we'll be doing episodes where we're simply reading abstracts of past and recent papers on the subject. We want the show to be a place where you can quickly get a curation of information on this topic and on the go. And number 3, I hope it's not too long before we're able to have multiple guests and have expert roundtables and cross-syndrome discussions as episodes as well. Now, as someone who's not a scientist but does have a few years of personal research and study in neuroscience, I'll do my best to bridge the gap and make sure that this is all as understandable as possible to the non-scientist listeners, but also in depth enough to be of great value to the researchers and academics. And we start those interviews in the next episode, episode 2, and we start out with a big bang. Dr. Michael Levin of Tufts University is going to explain how they are using bioelectric signals to regrow amputated hind limbs, fully innervated, fully functional hind limbs off of adult frogs, and regrow fully functional damaged brains in tadpoles. And when I say fully functional, I mean indecipherable from healthy controls, going from severe brain damage to showing, intelligence at the level of the healthy controls. It's really, really fascinating. And that episode is available right now. But before you click over to that episode, feel free to visit neuronregeneration.com and join our time-saving email newsletter, where we're going to send out a weekly email with recent papers and news on neural regeneration, episodes of this show, of course, and really just kind of keep you up to date on this topic and do some of that work for you. Finally, if you would like to suggest a guest that you'd love to see us interview, or if you think you'd be a great guest yourself, please reach out to us at info@neuronregeneration.com. So thank you again for joining me, and welcome to the Neuron Regeneration community and podcast.